Everyone, welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. The movie I want to discuss today comes from 1983, COUP DE TORCHON. It's directed by Bertrand Tavernier. It stars Phillipe Noiret, Stéphane Adrien, and Isabelle Huppert. And if you are an Isabelle Huppert fan, you have to watch this movie. She is absolutely terrific in this movie. The whole cast is good, however. It's not on physical release anymore. COUP DE TORCHON was a DVD, early DVD from Criterion. They've never upgraded it. However, it is streaming on the Criterion channel and for a long time. And if you do watch on the Criterion channel, also don't miss the about a 45-minute interview with Bertrand Tavernier discussing this film because it has a fascinating backstory to it. Tavernier has a very heavy accent, but it's worth trying because he is a great film historian, and we'll get to that a little bit later. And he really knows how to describe the making of COUP DE TORCHON in that interview. Now, the movie is based on a novel called Pop 1280. Pop 1280 meaning population. Small towns in America, as you entered the town, they would give the name of the town below it, they would give the population. So this is a small town. It's a novel by Jim Thompson. Jim Thompson is one of the most extraordinary writers in American literature of the 20th century, the late 20th century. He is a pulp writer. He delivers the goods in the pulp, but he had a lot more ambition than that. And this story is about a sheriff in this very small town, and he really doesn't, he's pretty lazy. He doesn't do his job very well. He allows himself to be sort of abused by some of the rich people in the town, and also they have a brothel in this town. It's set, the book is set in the Deep South, doesn't give us a specific state. There is a brothel in town. He gets graft from the pimps who run this brothel, but they abuse him both physically as well. And he seems to take it all in stride. But also he has a way of talking himself out of actually prosecuting the law, and he never arrests anybody. But he's very likable, very kind. He gets elected to the sheriff. So in the book, he's actually going through a re-election campaign, which adds a little bit more to his personality and how he displays it to the town, the people who live in the town. But the movie sets this story in 1938, and we're in French Equatorial Africa. It's Senegal, and that's where the film is made. In fact, it was made entirely on location in Senegal, which really adds to the appeal of the film. And the movie never, despite the fact that they changed location from country to country, but it was a brilliant decision that was made here, because in the book, is in the segregated South, and in the movie we have the colonial powers ruling a huge population of black natives who, and in both cases, the black people are seen as subhuman and abused without any feeling that you might be punished. And both in the movie very much follows the book in the sense of the comedy. Isabelle Huppert is very funny here, Stéphane Adrien as well, and the sheriff himself, because there seems to be a little bit more behind all his reluctance to do anything, and he's just good-natured about it, and nobody wants me to do my job. When some of the other townspeople, why don't you do something here when one of the natives is getting beat up in the middle of the road? And he sort of talks his way out of it. You can see there's something a little bit more to this sheriff than meets the eye. In the book, the sheriff, it's a first-person narrative. We're inside his brain. Everything we see is through his point of view. But he's an unreliable narrator, and I think Tavernier and the screenwriter did a good job in sort of transposing that idea. So we see him when he's totally fed up with all this that's going on in town. Even though he's got a good job, he's not really a highly regarded person. But not only that, his home life. He's married to Stefana Dran, and you might not even recognize her from her Claude Chabrol movies. And she's a shrew, and they're living with her younger brother. But I don't think anybody really feels that is the wife's younger brother. And the movie pretty much makes it clear that even the sheriff knows what's going on. He's being cuckolded right under his own roof on a daily basis. So then he sees underneath this placid exterior, he is starting to seethe, and he is plotting. We don't even know this yet, but he is plotting his revenge, and it comes swiftly. The worm turns kind of story, and it's very much it's very much a psychological story. Jim Thompson, pulp writer to the max. He was very ambitious, however. So the novel Pop 1280 is very readable, great dialogue, very funny, but there's a psychological element that's very evident in all of Thompson's works. Here, the sheriff has his mother died in childbirth. His father never forgave him and beat him, constantly. So there, and Tavernier is often called the dime store Dostoevsky, and for good reason. But not only is there this psychological, ambitious psychological element to Thompson's work, but there's also nihilism. Now, nihilism is a word that's used a lot. I've used it probably too frequently myself. But when it comes to nihilism, this is Jim Thompson. This is what you're going to get in this movie. It doesn't dilute it. There's one particular scene that really upsets people. And Thompson was not a humanist. He was an out-and-out nihilist. He believed everything was rotten, everything is corrupt, destroy everything. There is no moral compass. In real life, Thompson was a left-winger, disillusioned with any kind of politics that were going to make things better because the system itself was so corrupt, so evil. And he would feel this in the location he was living in the movie, especially. He sees the evils of colonialism, and this is a big part of the movie. It's in the book too, but it's really evident in the movie that this is part of the corruption, this colonialism, and Senegal looks fantastic here. Now, Tavernier was going for a non-exotic look. He did not want to have, shots of, exotic animals off in the distance, and also natives with spears and, shields. And even though they were used on the posters, Tavernier was in the corner of the posters for these, both in the U.S. and in France. They used images like you were going to see a story about Africa. But this is a story about Senegal, a small town in Senegal, and they wanted to capture what it really was like. It was rather ordinary. It wasn't exotic. The screenwriter here, Jean Orange, before the war, he had lived in Africa, and he understood what it looked like, what the light was like as well. And in the afternoon, the lights, the colors in the town will all start to fade away, and they wanted to have that look for COUP de Torchon, and they had Alexander Troner. I didn't realize he was still, as their production director, I didn't even realize he was still working. Went back way in the early days in 1930s in France and designed Billy Wilder's The Apartment. And he really went all out with trying to create this kind of muted color. This film really does have a very alluring look to it. And it's a different kind of Africa. It's a more ordinary, what ordinary people would live. like in Africa and what their small towns actually look like. Um, and so as the film progresses, and Jim Thompson, he's a difficult writer to duplicate on film, and even when you're faithful to everything that happens, you're not really getting the full scope of the horror that you feel when you read Thompson's novels. Série Noire, I did a discussion with Série Noire, another French adaptation of a Jim Thompson novel, which is also very good. And it's funny that I think the two best adaptations of Thompson come from France, COUP de Torchon and Série Noire. And I'll leave a link in the description box if anybody wants to check out my discussion of that movie. And I do want to talk a little bit more about Tavernier, because he is one of the great figures of world cinema. Most people don't know who he is, but he was. He made a whole bunch of films, and in fact, many of those films have streamed on the Criterion Channel. I think last time I looked, there was about 8 or 9 of his films that are on the Criterion streaming on the Criterion Channel. Urge you to check it out. And there is a Blu-ray. I think Kino released the Blu-ray of Weekend in the Country, which comes right after COUP de Torchon, and is largely considered Tavernier's best film. And this is a book by Tavernier, the filmmaker of Lyon, and many of his films set in Lyon. And he was, and part of Tavernier's importance was he was a film historian to the max. So he had unfortunately, I think he died in 2021, but he operated a cinematheque in his hometown of Lyon. Is considered one of the greatest cinematheques in the world. Hopefully it's still going on. And he wrote a history of American cinema, 2-volume, voluminous works, and it was updated in 1991. It's never been translated into English, and that's a real tragedy. And David Thompson has read it, I guess, in French, obviously, and he said it's just essential, and for some sad reason, it's not been translated. And he also made a film, a multi-part film on the history of French cinema. That is in France indispensable. I think he also did one on American cinema. But the French, I have in my collection somewhere buried in in a box in my closet. I have his history of French cinema, and it's just amazing, because he's such a good film historian, knows all the details of everything. He's a real enthusiast, and of course that's mostly often attracted to. I mean, Tavernier was sort of anti-New Wave. He was a publicist during the New Wave of Hollywood directors when their films, directors' films when they came to Paris. But he always wanted to make movies, and he was sort of on the outs with the New Wave. His screenwriter, Jean Rench, was singled out by Francois Truffaut, I guess, in the Politique d'Auteur days, and as an example of the stodgy old French movies that us new guys, with all this vitality going out in the streets and all. And Tavernier, he didn't like that attitude. He thought there was a whole lot of great movies before the French New Wave. And the French New Wave did like Renoir, but they sort of dismissed almost everybody else. So Orange works on this movie, but also the first 3 movies, and he was in his 80s. And he made some changes to the novel. I gotta say, the changes he made to the novel, even though they're kind of subtle, they are really brilliant changes, and it brings in the aspect of religion, because the sheriff, as he unravels, believes himself to be a kind of Jesus Christ. So we have a priest in the movie that was not in the book. So Tavernier, again, Tavernier is in the Criterion Collection with Round Midnight. This was the jazz movie with Dexter Gordon, and a very good movie. You would never think that the director of this is the director of COUP de Torchon, however. He made very many different kinds of movies, deliberately so. That's what he wanted to do. He just didn't want to make film noir or historical. He made them all. He worked in just about every genre. So next up, I'm going to go from nihilism to surrealism as I proceed forward with my discussion, my year-long discussion of the films of Louis Buñuel, and the next one is going to be The Phantom of Liberty. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.